What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. We still got to talk about Alberta separatism. We got to talk about referendums. We got to talk about all that jazz because let's be honest, it's heating up in the country. It's definitely a turning point for people. Whether you live in Alberta or not, there's no denying that people are fed up. I've heard the comments, the chime-ins from all viewers in this community all over social media saying they've had enough no matter what province they're in. And people are scared about what the future of Canada looks like. Alberta so much now isn't necessarily focused on who won the elections, but now how do we take steps forward to protect ourselves? What's funny, and I mentioned this on another video, I said we'd cover it in another video, is a former premier of Alberta stepping up to try and fan the flames, just not in a good way. In fact, we've seen what pushback to these things does before. It does nothing more than increase the following. I doubt that was the plan, but I said we'd talk about it nonetheless. Let's take a look at this article from the Calgary Herald. I know the whole screen isn't on here. I had to centralize the actual text of the article, but it's written from more left-leaning Don Braid of the Calgary Herald, saying former UCP Premier Jason Kenney, aka Fat Stalin, refutes separatists, says Carney has chance to right the wrongs. This is why Jason Kenney was kicked out of Alberta. You guys ever remember, if you were in Alberta, you remember Jason Kenney running saying, I'm going to stand up to Justin Trudeau. I'm going to right the wrongs. I'm going to make sure that we follow Alberta's, guiding light, that we're going to make our province prosperous and yada, yada, yada. He wrote Justin Trudeau a letter. And what did he do when Justin Trudeau ignored his letter? Well, he wrote him another letter and said, I'm still angry at you, Justin Trudeau. The reason for that is because Fat Stalin here, he's a federalist. He's not a conservative. He is the Doug Ford of Alberta. He is just a liberal in sheep's clothing, disguising himself as a conservative. Jason Kenney didn't care about Alberta, and the voters spoke when it came time to remove him from office. But I want to cover this because this is where, again, you're going to see significant pushback in Alberta. Guys like this that want to come in and say, hey, I refute you guys. You remember when Justin Trudeau called the trucker convoy a small fringe minority with unacceptable views? Look at the flames growing from that. The amount of support and outpouring that they got from that statement. Jason Kenney saying, I refute separatists. I know what Albertans need. You sure about that there, Chief? Albertans spoke and they kicked you to the curb. I'm pretty sure they'll do it again if you try to interfere. Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberals are back in power, and it's great news for Alberta's separatists. I love how they use that term, that we're separatists. Nobody wants to separate from Canada. People just want a fair deal. We want to be treated with respect. We want to be treated with the same respect as Eastern provinces get. Yves Blanchette says that Quebec wants something, they get it. Ontario says they want something, they get it. Alberta contributes the most GDP to the country. We're told we're going to put our boot on your neck, and you're not allowed to dig for oil. You're not allowed to drill. You're not allowed to expand. Your people are going to live in poverty. You're going to struggle to pay bills. And you're never going to get ahead, even though you contribute the most. We're going to ignore you. We're going to treat you like a redheaded stepchild. We're going to smack you around like one, and you just shut up and put up. They're done. That doesn't make us separatists. That makes us opportunists. We're looking at how to maximize our impact. Various independents, boosting groups. I love how, again, they word this, because, again, Dodd Braid's a lefty, can now continue to farm rage and raise money. A conservative victory would have been bad for business. Former Premier Jason Kenney took a run at New Republican Party of Alberta, formerly the Buffalo Party, one of many cynical fundraising grifts that will seek to monetize people's frustration, he said on X. These guys have learned from MAGA industry how to do this. It's big business in the US. So again, Jason Kenney putting labels on things, trying to dehumanize people as some sort of like radicalist. Don't be one of their marks, wrote Kenney, who is now a director of Herald owner Post Media. Kenney is no friend of Liberal Ottawa, As the first UCP premier, he constantly battled the feds and the courts. Very much so. Again, just doing something or putting your name on a piece of paper doesn't mean that you're actually battling anybody. He did what he had to do to keep his seat. He did not fight the way they lead him on to fight. In fact, what's really funny is that if you follow Fat Stalin, and I know some people don't like me calling Jason Kenney that, but if you follow him, he sat down with Rosemary Barton on election night. He sat with the CBC. So for a guy who says he knows what Alberta needs, yeah, you go hang out with the CBC all night. That makes the most sense. It says he challenged the carbon tax with a letter, Bill C-69, the plastics ban, and application of the Emergencies Act, winning as often as he lost. He launched a referendum on reforming equalization that carried but was ignored by Ottawa despite their constitutional duty to take it seriously, because nobody takes him seriously anyways. No Alberta premier, including Danielle Smith, has done more to check Ottawa's powers since Peter Lougheed in the 1980s. But Kenney draws the line at fermenting support for separating Alberta from Canada. He doesn't mention Smith, although her stance on that line isn't quite so clear. Again, Danielle made a very calculated move when she put forward the adjustments in order for independent Albertans to move forward with a question, or at least the proposition of a question, in order to push for a referendum. If she came out and did this, imagine what this article would be doing to slap her. She did this the right way. It says resentment and anxiety in Alberta is a very real thing, Kenney said in an interview. Alberta and the resource-producing parts of Western Canada have totally legitimate grievances about the direction of policy under the Trudeau government and totally legitimate anxieties about where this will go under Mark Carney. It's not anxieties. We know where he's going to go. Read his book. Listen to the way he speaks. Look at his policies. Alberta knows where this is headed. It's the job of the provincial government to defend Alberta's interests in the Federation. It's the job of any premier to raise those issues. Well, she has. She changed the rules for people to vote for independence. She's representing actual Albertans. When it comes to separation, I think the so-called separatist movement in Alberta has never been a serious enterprise. Those words are going to bite him in the backside. If you think that, look at the amount of signatures Alberta Prosperity Project raised in just 24 hours. The outcry, the outpouring. Remember, they said before the election, 30% without a designated leader of Albertans were ready to vote for separation should the Liberals win the election. This just goes to show you Kenney's just pushing federal politics. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's always been a fringe movement that I think is counterproductive. Well, we all know what happens when you call people the fringe, don't you? Small fringe minority with unacceptable views. Bad choice of words, Jason Kenney. Over about a dozen federal and provincial elections, they have only managed to elect a candidate in one riding. That was Gordon Kessler in 1982 as a Western Canada concept candidate in the by-election at the height of the National Energy Program in the heart of rural Alberta. Again, those were different times. The question came forward. This isn't about electing separatists. This is about people. A movement of people that have had enough. I understand that during the NEP or the National Energy Program, things were very different, but the tone in Alberta was that Peter Lougheed was standing up for Albertans. That he would make sure the federal government would listen to us. The question was asked on Rebel News with Ezra Levant. If you had a Preston Manning-like figure in the 90s, or if Preston Manning himself would have said in the 90s, Alberta wants out, especially when things were booming the way they were in Alberta, what do you think the reaction would have been? I think Preston Manning could have convinced a number of Albertans, maybe whether successful or not, to at least consider the idea that Alberta has had enough. I was there the night Kessler shocked the country with the winning olds in Didsbury. He was the first and last separatist ever elected outside Quebec. Again, speaking before we've even done anything. Months later, he lost his seat in a general election. Western Canada Concept ran candidates in every provincial riding, but only won 11% of the vote. Today's separatist movement is nowhere near as organized as it was in those days. Albertans were even angrier then, to the point that a rally packed 2,500 people into Edmonton's Jubilee Auditorium, where the provincial Liberal leader Nick Taylor's very life seemed to be at risk. But even that movement went nowhere at the polls and faded away in a few years. Again, though, we're talking about 14 years, once Mark Carney is up, of abuse. Not just one prime minister. We've seen how corrupt politicians are. We've seen how the system doesn't work for Alberta. And Albertans, for the most part, are very somber people. They're willing to work with Canada. I've mentioned it many times. We don't want to separate. But when you have polls showing 30% support for separation, how can you sit and say, well, I'm going to compare this to statistics from 40 years ago? Things change over time. Kenney says, if the Canadian Federation is nothing more than a ledger exercise about fiscal transfers, then it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense for Alberta. But a country is so much more than that. There are deeper, more enduring commitments and shared values, a common history that, for me, are more important than the almighty dollar. Well, that's rich coming from him. I think we lose voice in Central Canada if we constantly allow this tail to wag the dog. Carney's got an amazing opportunity to start with a clean slate. No, he doesn't. Again, this is the Federalist point of Jason Kenney coming in. I'm obviously a big conservative. No, you're not. I voted for Pierre Poilievre. Carney said he wants Canada to be an energy superpower, a line borrowed from Stephen Harper. He said he wants to get an oil and gas to global markets and advance major projects, build, build, build. Those are things, all music to my ears. Well, that's because he stole it all from Pierre. He's not actually going to do it. Preston Manning, the Reform Party founder, and again, we talked about this in another video previous to this, has said he believes Western Canada will move inexorably to separation if the Liberals won. One of these Alberta Conservative veterans is plain wrong. I don't think it's Jason Kenney. Well, that's Don Braid as a Liberal. He's going to sit there and say Jason Kenney knows what he's talking about. Well, Jason Kenney got booted out of office. He couldn't hold his job. What's really funny is that when you compare that, there's a National Post article. Sorry, forgive me. Again, I know you can't see the whole article here, but it says hockey and nostalgia won't keep us together. Some Albertans say they're serious about separation after the Liberal win. They're talking about Mark Carney directly. He can't just use nostalgia to bait people into thinking that Alberta's going to be just fine. That, hey, we're going to give you a fair shake at the table. Quebec just announced a few days ago they will not welcome any oil and gas into Eastern Canada. That is not acceptable. It's just more of the same old song and dance. The problem is that when you do the same thing over and over and over again that fails and expect different results, at some point you have to change the formula. At some point you have to stop skating uphill and realize the path forward is in another direction. That's what Alberta is forming here. That's what they're doing. Am I saying that it's going to succeed? Not 100%. We'll have to see what those numbers look like as Alberta Prosperity Project and other entities plan out the future of Alberta. I do guarantee that it is going to be swift. I think it's going to be precise. I don't think they'll move forward if they don't see a clear path to victory. But with all that on the table, let me ask you, the viewer, do you think Jason Kenney is right, or do you think Preston Manning is more correct? Who do you think knows Alberta best, and who do you think is going to be eating crow when this is all said and done? Let me know your thoughts down below. If it's your first time here, I hope this video has earned your subscription. Make sure you're hitting that button. Click the bell for notifications. Join me live here on the channel each and every Friday night for Friday Night Fringe, our live streaming weekly show where I'm joined by the beautiful Mrs. Fringe as we talk about everything that happened this week in politics, everything we know that's coming up ahead, as well as back and forth within the greatest YouTube community on the platform. I look forward to hearing what each of you have to say inside of those live streams, but I most importantly look forward to hearing what you have to say this Friday night, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central here on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.